prediction video for UFC Fight Night Johnson versus Hayes. Let's start at the bottom. First fight is Ashley Smith versus Katlyn Vieira. And Katlyn looks like she's okay. She's got some striking, some jiu-jitsu, but I think Ashley Smith is an amazing wrestler. I think, she lost her debut fight to Raquel Pennington, but I felt like she was winning that whole fight until she got caught in that bulldog choke. I think that her wrestling, we've seen in her last couple of fights, she's able to just dominate people. And I think the same thing's going to happen in this fight. I think she's going to take this chick down and just beat her up. Next is Zach Cummings versus Nathan Coy. I think these guys are pretty similar, but I think that Zach Cummings just has much better striking. I'd say they're both really strong wrestlers with some... I think Zach Cummings actually has better submissions. I think that Nathan Coy is just kind of a grinder, and that's about it. I think Zach Cummings has got a better chin and a better striking game, and I think he's just going to win by knockout sooner or later. Next is Anthony Smith versus Andrew Sanchez. And Andrew Sanchez, I think he's getting hyped up a little bit too much. I mean, he's a good jiu-jitsu guy, and his striking definitely looks decent, but I think Anthony Smith, his striking is definitely better in my opinion, and I think that his jiu-jitsu is good enough to keep up with Sanchez, and I think that this is a really big test, and I'm gonna go with Anthony Smith. I think that he's gonna get the slight upset over Andrew Sanchez. I think this fight's gonna be a striking match for the most part, and I think that, like I said, I think Smith's just better, and sooner or later he's gonna win by knockout or TKO. Next is Devin Clark versus Jake Collier, and Devin Clark is, he fights at 205, and it's a little weird to see him moving down to middleweight because he's a pretty big dude. I think Jake Collier, they're both wrestlers, but Jake Collier has shown some much improved striking over his last couple of fights. Both these guys, they have good offense, but not great defense. And they also, I've seen them both get almost knocked out and knocked out before. So I think it's just one of those things where whoever lands the first big punch is probably going to win. But I think Jake Collier is just a little bit better of a striker, so I'm going to say he lands that big punch first. Next is Aljamain Sterling versus Augusto Mendez, and they just straight up hate Aljamain Sterling. Like, I'm not going to lie. This dude can never catch a break. He's never on main cards for anything, or at least, the Fox 1 card. He's, always on the Fight Pass prelims. It's just because he talks about not getting paid what he's worth, which seems to be, a big thing, but I don't know why they just punish the shit out of him more than, anybody else. I think this is a weird fight because I think Augusto Mendez is a lot better than I originally thought. In his last fight, his striking looked really, really good. I think it's just that he fought Cody Garbrandt, who's just way better of a striker than most people. But his jiu-jitsu is amazing, and his striking is really good, and I think that this is one of those fights where it's just who can kind of impose their game. I think that if Augusto Mendez is able to get within Aljamain Sterling's reach, he could absolutely win this fight. And based on what I saw in his last fight, his striking looks really, really good. And his jiu-jitsu is, in my opinion, one of the best in this weight class. I think that I knew that coming into the UFC, he was probably going to be one of the best jiu-jitsu guys in the weight class. But it's one of those things where I've already seen Aljamain Sterling kind of lose to Brian Caraway. And it's just one of those things where I've never thought his striking was that good. He kind of has that Phil Davis style where he just likes to fight long because he doesn't like getting hit a lot. So I think Augusto Mendez might be able to pull this off. I think if he's able to get in that reach and hit the takedowns, then he should be able to win this fight. And just based on his last fight, I think he's able to do it. So I think Augusto Mendez is going to win by decision or maybe a submission late in the third round. Next is Tim Elliott versus Louis Smolka. And, Tim Elliott's a good fighter, but I still feel like he leaves a lot of random openings because he's so wild. I think that really good submission guys would be able to hit on that. And that's what I think Louis Smolka is. I think he's a really good submission guy, and I think the way that Tim shoots for stuff and the way he will roll for stuff randomly, I think he opens himself up a lot more for submissions than other guys. And I think sooner or later, Louis is going to catch him in something like an armbar or guillotine. Next is Bobby Green versus Rashid Magomedov. And I could see this easily being kind of like what the Barboza fight with Bobby Green was. I think Rashid could easily just kind of outstrike him a little bit and stick and move from the outside. But I'm going to go with Bobby Green. I think that he mixes in his striking with his wrestling, and he might even submit him, but I don't think so. But I think Bobby Green's going to hit the takedowns when he needs to because I think he has a big wrestling advantage. He just needs to use it, and I think as long as he uses his wrestling smartly, he'll be able to get the takedowns and probably end up winning a decision. Next is Patrick Williams versus Tom... I can't say this guy's last name. But Patrick Williams, to me, he's just an okay wrestler with some decent striking. His record's 7-4. I feel like he does one thing really well, and it's he explodes really fast and he wings big shots. But he can't do that for long, and I feel like when it doesn't work after the first like round and a half, he starts to fade. I think Tom, he's probably one of the best up and comers right now. He's 14-1 from France. His one loss was to that Swedish guy Merkwan, who's an amazing wrestler and is also one of the best prospects in that weight class. And that was a long time ago. I think Tom's won like 8 straight since he lost that fight. So I think that Tom's an amazing striker, and his grappling game looks like it's at least above average. I think that as long as he can get through the first round, he should be able to win this fight by knockout or submission in the second round. That's how I have it. I think Tom's going to win by finish. And next we got Alexander Volkov versus Roy Nelson. And I feel like this fight's going to go one of two ways. Either Alexander Volkov's just going to be able to outstrike him technically from the outside, or Roy Nelson's going to eventually get in and land one of those big overhand rights. And I just feel like Alexander's a lot younger, and, Roy's been out for a little while. I just think Alexander's going to be able to kind of outpoint him with his length and speed and probably just win a decision. That's about it for that fight. Next is Jeremy Stephens versus Rento Marciano. And Renato, he's a good jiu-jitsu guy, but that's about it. I don't think he's an amazing wrestler, and I think especially at 145, Jeremy Stephens' takedown defense has looked amazing. I don't think Renato has the striking to keep up with Jeremy Stephens. I think Jeremy Stephens is just going to eventually, I don't know if he'll knock him out, but I just think he's going to be able to outstrike him on the feet, and I don't think Renato's going to be able to hit takedowns on Jeremy. So I just think Jeremy's going to win either by decision or TKO late in the third. Next is Ronaldo Chakra Souza versus Robert Whitaker, and to me, I think this fight's way closer than people are giving it credit for. I think, Robert Whitaker's looked fucking amazing in his last couple of fights. I don't think he's been taken down since he's moved up to middleweight. I think that he has a big speed advantage over a lot of guys because he's a little bit smaller. I think that his striking is also one of the best at that weight class, and his knockout power has been there in pretty much every single fight. I think that Chakra, his striking is definitely improved, but I don't think it's as good as Whitaker's. And it's one of those things where even if he does get to the ground, Whitaker's got a really good ground game. I think that he'll be able to fight off Chakra enough to get it back to the feet. I know that Chakra is one of the best guys ever, grappling-wise, and he could easily win this fight by submission. But for some reason, I just feel like Robert Whitaker is going to be able to stuff those takedowns and kind of do what Luke Rockhold did to Chakra and just kind of outstrike him for 3 rounds. But I think this will be closer than that fight because Chakra's striking has been better. I honestly think this is going to be fight of the night. This is the fight I'm looking most forward to on the whole card, but I think Robert Whitaker is going to get it done. I think he wins by either split decision or like a 29-28 decision. Next, we got Rose Namajunas versus Michelle Waterson, and to me, these chicks have the exact same style. This fight is probably the closest fight on the whole card. I think that Michelle Waterson's just fought better people, and I think she's beaten similar people to Rose a little bit more impressively, mainly Paige Van Zandt. She got it done in like half a round, as where it took Rose like 4.5. I think that Michelle's just a little bit more technical with her striking. I think Rose is a little bit more wild. I also think on the ground too, I just think everywhere Michelle's just a little bit more technical, even though they're similar. I think Rose kind of likes to fight a little bit more wild. And I think the better technique from Michelle is gonna be the thing that gets her, just edges her out throughout the fight. And I think that she's either gonna win by decision or maybe a late submission. But either way, I've got Michelle Waterson. Next and finally, we've got Demetrius Johnson versus Wilson Hayes. And I've said this before. Tim Elliott put up a better fight than I thought he was going to because I didn't think his striking was going to be as good against Demetrius as it was. But I don't think a grappler is going to beat Demetrius. I think the person that's going to beat Demetrius is a guy with really good striking, really good takedown defense. And unfortunately, the UFC did not re-sign Kyoji Horiguchi, who was the only guy at this point in time that I thought could do it. Maybe Benavidez, but they don't want to give him the fight. They'd rather give it to not Wilson Hayes. I just don't think Wilson Hayes has the striking to knock out Demetrius. I don't think his grappling is as good as Demetrius is. Even though he's a really high-level black belt, he doesn't have a lot of submission wins under his belt. I just think Demetrius is going to be able to outpace him, especially in like the 4th and 5th round. And he might even get a late finish, but I think Demetrius is just going to win this fight by like 48 or 49-46 on all the judges' scorecards. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe.